Welcome back to Switch to Linux. Today we want to have a look at Solus 4.1 Budgie. Enough of you asked me to do a review of this one in addition to doing the Plasma one I did. I'm not sure if I'm going to do the GNOME or Mate ones or not, but regardless, what we're going to do is just have a look at the desktop. Of course, we talked a little bit about the specific changes in Solus 4.1 when we did the Plasma video, which you can have a look at in the description there. And what we find is, the latest applications are installed, of course. It's one of the great things about Solus is it is a rolling release. You do get a lot of more up-to-date applications. You get more applications that are going to work with the system, and the old legacy ones, old ones that aren't supported and things, those really aren't in the system much anymore, which is just okay. Now, we are running on the latest kernel, which right now would be 5.4.12, so that it will support the widest range of hardware. So if you have the latest Radeon or Ryzen's or NVIDIA's, whatever else you're using, the kernel should be able to support it out of the box using the open source drivers available for those. And we're going to find in this case, it's going to be a very good user experience because Solus generally is. So what we're going to do here is we're going to jump on over to our Solus desktop and have a look what this looks like. And we'll highlight some of the ways about how to use Solus as we go. Now, we are not completely fresh out of the box. And the reason is I got some very helpful feedback about sometimes showing GTK and Qt applications because some distributions just don't do a pretty good job of making sure there's consistency and unity across the applications installed. Solus, particularly on Budgie, actually does a really amazingly good job of this. In fact, that's one of the criticisms Pizza Loving Nerd had on his video about the Plasma theming issues, which were, in my opinion, fairly minor, except for the one bug he identified. And so with that, though, we want to go ahead and have a look at what this is going to look like. So I did install a few extra applications. So let's first go ahead into some of the the basic stuff here. So on Solus, it is its own distribution, so it's not based on Debian or based on Arch or things like this. The advantage of that is that they have cleaned out the packages so that there's really not hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of applications. It's basically the most common applications you're going to find. It also does have Snap and Flatpak support out of the box. I think terminal support out of the box for Flatpaks, and I think all support for snaps, if I remember correctly. Okay, so you can get anything that is packaged in either of those two formats are going to work on this. So we don't have a lot of big software things, but if there is a little obscure software package that you wanted to use, then you might have to give Solus a pass. Now, it does have its own package manager, which is EO package. So that's something that I don't know if anything else out there uses it or not, but this is, so you're not using apt, you're not using Pacman. So this one has its own, but it's very easy. It's very much like apt, just replace EO package for apt, So if I wanted to install VLC, EO package install VLC, enter your password, and it's going to tell us, in this case, we need to install other packages to install VLC. It does actually do a very fast job of installing and downloading applications. So you can see, boom, it's done. VLC is already installed. So now you can see VLC is now installed on the system. So it is very nice, very fast in that respect. They do have a lot of documentation for all the ins and outs of EO package, which I'm certainly not an expert in because I don't run Solus on a very large regular basis. But while we're here, let's just notice this terminal just looks beautiful. Very nice. Just very nice theming overall. Now, I'm not sure if this is the original default theming because I did change things around to have a look at how applications worked. I do notice out of the box our clock is in 24-hour time. I think we can just toggle that over here. So here's automatic time zones, time format, AM, PM time format. So nice and easy. That's easy enough to change. Okay, the other thing I really like about Solus is they do have their own custom software center, which I find to be very good. Here we got a notification that there are system updates. So head on over here to updates. You can kind of see what we have. So I'm not sure if I run updates, it looks like I have to install these. I'm not a huge fan of that. I might look at this and say, I don't really want to install some of these updates. Now, I do have the choice to not install anything, but over here, I can choose or not to choose to install these guys. But these updates, yeah, deal with it, bucko. You're getting them installed. So that I'm not a big fan of that. The other thing, while we're talking about stuff I don't really like, is on the installer, it will not let me use a weak password for my user account, which for me, that's actually a little bit annoying because I want control over my systems. And if I want to use 123 as my super secret password, that should be up to me. I like how things like Fedora fix that. It's like, hey, this is a weak password. You have to click confirm twice, just so you know it's a weak password. I'd rather it do something like that and give me the choice, because in this case, this is on a virtual machine on a very well secured system that never leaves my office, that doesn't have anything important on it. I don't care if the password is 123. In fact, I would prefer it be 123 because I will have a consistent password. So those are a couple little fairly tiny gripes. As far as applications installs out of the box, GIMP is not installed on this. Kdenlive is over here, which is not installed. Obviously, I just installed VLC, so that's not installed, but most of everything else you see here is good. It has a decent amount of utilities, not an overwhelming amount, but we do have a basic disk utilities. I don't think we have a USB writer, or do we? We do not have a USB writer, but we do have our disks. We have a system monitor, so let's have a look at what our system's doing. So we're running just under a gigabyte of memory, which is very good. All right, so now let's go ahead and boot up some applications. So looking at GIMP, this is going to be an example of a GTK themed item. So you can kind of see how everything looks. Everything is very consistent across the entire operating system. So this guy here is, of course, a GTK application. Let's go ahead and pull up our Budgie settings, desktop settings, which is going to be an example of a themed system application. So here's a themed system application. Not a lot of changes. The menu bar is a little bit higher, but nothing else out of the box there. And let's go ahead and pull up Kdenlive. Now, if you're using Kdenlive as a test, understand that Kdenlive actually comes with its own theming. And the first time you boot it up, it is not necessarily going to follow your theming systems because it will allow you to use theming individually. That's always just been a part of how Kdenlive is. That's not with all Qt applications. That's just kind of the way the system's always run. So you might not like that. You might really like that. So may not be the best application, but still overall, you can see that the theming is still good. It is different because it doesn't have all of the exact same themes that we have. But you can get the idea that it's going to work well. And you can choose different theming, of course, inside of that. Let's have a look at Evolution. I also installed this one. I believe this is a GTK application, as I recall. So it's going to look very, very good out of the box. Let's go ahead and minimize Evolution there. Where is it? There you are. Okay, so all the theming is again pretty good and consistent. Now in Solus, we have the ability to toggle light themes and dark themes, and we can choose between different theming styles. So you can see here, now Evolution and GIMP. GIMP didn't like that very much. Let's go ahead and restart GIMP. Let's see if GIMP is fixed with that or not. Not sure. So it looks like this one here does not necessarily have good theming on this particular theme. So let's go ahead and go to one of these, and now we're back to regular theming. So if you're on your widget defaults, then you may not be looking quite as good. Over here, Evolution is definitely matching what we're doing, and let's go back to Kdenlive, see how that one looks. Again, Kdenlive, it does its own little thing. You change its theming by default over here. So you'll just have to manually do Kdenlive. Again, it's going to look pretty good. It's just not as consistent across the board. But everything else will pretty much fall in line. Let's see if I have any other Qt app on here that's... I'm not all that good at knowing which applications are Qt and which applications are not. So Let's go ahead. I think Sigil might be Qt. Let's have a look at that. I installed Sigil on this as well. All right, so here's an example. I believe this is a Qt app. You feel free to correct me if I'm wrong about that. I would like to know, but I do believe it is. So you can see here it is matching our theming as well, very well out of the box. So that is kind of how the theming works. We've looked at installing packages. Other things on Solus, if you are just getting into it, we do have two settings. One of these is for the desktop settings. The other one is just your general system settings. So be aware of that. Two individual settings boxes. So this main settings box is basically your GNOME settings, which this is based on GNOME. So if you're doing online accounts, any privacy type things like this, all the basic stuff that you're going to find inside of your GNOME applications, you'll see there. Now, this one's going to control our Budgie desktop settings. So our basic theming colors, whether or not we have animations, this is our desktop icons, and then we can choose which icons that we have on our desktop. What are the fonts that we're using? Now, Raven is your settings menu over here, very much like a Mac type settings menu. So over here, you can have your notifications over here. We have our calendars over here. We have music applications. So you can kind of see what it's doing over here. Let's see, there's devices, here's applications. So there's nothing playing. So if I were to actually boot up VLC here, pull up the Raven menu, there's nothing playing, but now you'll see a little menu here for VLC as well. You can close VLC like that. Okay, so inside of your Raven, I like turning on the power strip, which is going to give us our login, log out power buttons and our settings. I like turning this on because I don't like my power setting being in the menu button down here. So of course you can get rid of that if you go to your bottom panel and find your, there's notifications. Let's see, there's your system tray notifications. Oh, hold on. I think the power menu is over here somewhere too. I can always find it when I'm not looking for it the most. Oh, it's the user indicator. So get rid of the user indicator, I think. Remove applet, so that'll get rid of your power indicators there. I like the power indicators on the Raven menu rather than over there. And notice that the power is not on your main menu. All right, so you can add and remove different applets to your menu. So we have caffeine, we have our basic clock. If you want to turn the users back on, just turn your it's the user indicator, workspace switcher, all that kind of stuff. Another thing that I was never been a big fan of Budgie is that these all behave like your pinned buttons, and I consequently hate pinned buttons. I'd prefer these behave like launchers. There is presently no way to make these behave as launchers. Sure, you can do things like middle click and right click and stuff like that. I don't like to do that. Again, very minor criticism. Here's your basic settings. How big do you want it to be? Do you automatically hide it? Do you have transparency or not? So a lot of fun settings inside of this. Overall, I think Budgie, though, is, despite a couple of minor drawbacks, it is definitely one of my favorite desktop environments. So with this, we've looked at theming, we've looked at Qt and GTK applications, we've looked at how to change the themings, installing software through both the Software Center here and your terminal. The other thing I'll mention is these guys over here, this is a great place where you can install your third-party application. So if you want to run Google Chrome or Android Studio, things like that, you can grab them from right inside of here. I think Spotify's in here, Skype is in here. So there's a lot of items in here that are not generally in Linux repos because they do have some proprietary elements. So I love the fact that we have a very nice way to grab those just most proprietary ones from right here inside of the center. So with that, that is Solus 4.1 Budgie. Let me know your thoughts about this distribution. I definitely think it's a good one. Unless you need some very weird, very specific Linux application, this is definitely something that you would certainly want to look at and use as going forward for a new user, just kind of switching over to Linux. I think it's easy to use. You don't generally have to get into the terminal And out of the box, it just looks very nice. It's very modern, and it's a very quick and snappy system. So let me know your thoughts about using Solus Budgie in the comments down below.